You guys ever find it funny that when you're talking to people about building real estate or investing in businesses, they always think you're just flush with cash? You guys ever have that?
Every time I go out to eat and the check comes, people give me the Tyrannosaurus Rex arms.
I mean, you do have short arms, but I don't know what the reference was. Aside from that, I have abnormally long arms actually for my height. But yeah, I know what you're talking about, Mitch. I mean, shit, I owned, early on for a lot of years, like the first decade, like the first 10 years of investing. Yeah, I owned millions and millions of dollars worth of real estate, and I operated with little to no money in the bank, right? Like we talked about it on past episodes. I was a lot more of a, ready, fire, aim, or build the parachute on the way down kind of person. Now I bought on fundamentals. It's not like they weren't cash flowing properties, but I started in small multifamily, right? And I created millions of dollars worth of equity, but you can't eat equity. You can't live off equity. You can't survive. Equity is great. So like, even when I was a paper millionaire, which I never tracked originally, even when I was a paper multi-millionaire, there were times, a lot of times, most of the time, the majority of the time, there wasn't money in the bank, or at least very little. It was enough to operate my real estate. It was enough to, sometimes like barely survive on. I mean, I used to be embarrassed to say, but like early on, like I owned millions of dollars worth of real estate and qualified for food stamps. Like, because like I had, for one, no active income, but like I didn't have a bunch of money, right? Like things went towards, it was like my modest lifestyle. And then things went back into the real estate. And that's not uncommon, I think, for real estate investors.
Yeah, well, I want to go back for 1 second. First of all, Travis's arm length, I think, makes everyone uncomfortable. That's the first thing I want to say. At least me, for sure. I can at least speak to that. No, I'm joking. So
what about his legs? His legs are two different lengths. That's interesting.
That's also an issue. I think we could do a whole episode on the build of Travis as the way he's built. Anyway, no, I think I go back to Monopoly though, like, because it's interesting because Monopoly in other words, we get to play this game and like simulate a life of real estate investing, not perfectly, but like in some ways there's parallels, but we get to do it in like 2 hours. Like, like someone's whole life investing in like 2 hours playing this game. And you'll always find the people who hoard the cash lose the game. The people that get the cash out the door as fast as they can, buy assets, they have options, they can negotiate, they can, even when they get cash poor or tight because you land on someone's property, you owe them a bunch of rent, they have options and they can negotiate themselves out of it. And I think in my life investing so far, I invested for a long time. I started to scale probably about 7 or 8 years ago. So I'm still in my adventure, or my journey scaling. Like, the more I'm focused on getting cash back out the door, working for me into good assets and good opportunity, the more it starts to come back in a snowball. So at first it's like the cash goes out, but it doesn't come back because it takes a while, right? To get cash flow, equity, all those things. But now in my 6th or 7th year of sort of scaling, now the cash is coming back at a faster rate. But like all the while, the whole game was stay cash poor, keep cash going out the door. Anytime you get cash back, you get back out the door working for, and I've always believed that like, that's going to be like what builds my castle, right? Versus like hoarding cash. I think the middle class and the poor are really, really focused on cash. They trade all their time for cash versus the rich trade any time that they're playing this game for opportunity.
But why?
And they get cash out the door because why what?
Like, why? It's not a hard concept to understand. Like, I think about, like, I also love Monopoly, and now we all play it in real life. But it's, Monopoly is pretty easy. You learn, or you should learn pretty quick. Like, those with the assets, those that own the properties, maybe they're capped poor, but they're investing in the real estate. They're investing in the properties on the Monopoly board, and at some point later in the game, as people pass those properties, they're paying you rent, and all that money that they've stacked up, they're now paying to you. And it's a very easy concept. It's a difference of making money and building wealth. But why? I don't think it's a lack of part of it could be a lack of understanding, but some of it, I think, and I'm curious to your guys' opinion, like, is it just the not willingness to have delayed gratification, to not to is it a lack of understanding or a lack of like desire and under like that cash disappears, but assets will put cash in your pocket forever.
Well, first of all, you mentioned how it's interesting. Mitch and I talk about this all the time, how cash follows assets, right? Even in the macro economy, stocks are assets, real estate are assets, and cash eventually bubbles their way up to assets, whether they're renters or they're customers for businesses or whatever the publicly traded companies. So I think that's the parallel to the monopoly board. But also I think that like you're asking why is it? I think it's our education system. I mean, what are we taught? Save money, invest in your 401k, which is another form of savings. So a liquid savings. So I think people are wired to hoard cash. And there's also a lot of fear. People look at their financial circumstances out of fear, right? Instead of getting up in the morning saying, where are the opportunities that I can go create value? It's how do I save more money to protect myself when shit's going to go wrong? Because it's going to go wrong. So I think it's just mindset and education. And that's why people do that.
If you like what you're hearing so far and you are not making at least $120,000 a year with cash flow real estate or have millions of dollars in equity, come check out our 0 to 100 elite community. The link is below. Check it out. I agree, but in real life, most people don't even save anything. They spend it all. And that's not just the poor and middle class. Like if you look at almost all across the board in the US, most people spend what they make. If they have no other assets, if they have no other revenue generating activities in their life outside of their job. I don't know if you guys have read the old book, The Millionaire Next Door. I think there's a second one too. I forget what it is. But they went into these like wealthy neighborhoods, right? To see like what the wealthy did. They found that in these wealthy neighborhoods, people were living paycheck to paycheck. And it didn't matter if they were poor, middle class, or high income earners, they spent all they had. So Monopoly, you don't have a bunch of other shit to spend on. So in Monopoly, in the game Monopoly, people hoard cash. In real life, yes, some people save, which I've never met one person in my entire life that has saved their way to wealth. But aside from that, I think the average person doesn't save anything. They spend it all, no matter how much they make, because they're not converting today's dollars into assets that will build wealth and go up in value over time and actually pay them into the future forever. Instead, they make more, they spend more, they make more, they spend more. And at the end of the day, they're left with no assets. Versus if you start funneling some of that into assets, like real estate, that's going to put money in your pocket, over time, your cash flow increases and you create equity, because in real estate, equity does happen over time.
Well, I see situations, I mean, you could, if you own a lot of assets, real estate assets, sometimes it's hard to outspend how fast that equity grows over time, right? Especially with forced appreciation. If you're buying assets that you can, grow $1 million in value in 12 to 24 months, like that's pretty easy with the multiplying effect of commercial asset appreciation and forced appreciation. And a lot of people, so it's like, do you keep the cash and grow it at 3%, or do you deploy it into assets where you can then start manipulating the financials and you have a lot more levers to pull? So it's another interesting concept. In fact, Mitch and I are trying to figure this out now. Like we've got, I don't know, just say a couple million in equity in an asset, but we've got 7 years left on this note at 4.5% or whatever. Do we access that equity and get 2% higher in the note and then redeploy that cash? Or do we just sit on the note and cash flow it? I mean, I think Mitchell and I are kind of leaning towards a velocity of capital. I think that's something people don't talk about a lot, is how quickly can you pull access equity and redeploy it into new assets? Now I've got one asset, then I converted that to 4 assets, but I have more levers to pull. So but it is like, as you grow, it's like, it's a balance between liquidity and assets. So there's a million and one different ways to debate that.
Well, I want to go back a little bit, because I was just listening to you guys talk about this, like how people they trade their time, okay, for money. Their most valuable resource ever is time, and you trade it for money, and then you take the money and then you spend it all, not on assets. You're spending on basically liabilities, being like material, the house, the car, the clothes, the vacation, all that stuff that's like, it's a liability. It goes away Or, I mean, a vacation, you spend it on it once and it goes away. But a nice car or like some of these other liabilities, like it keeps hitting you every single month. It actually makes your life worse in a lot of ways, right? Especially if you're trading your time to pay for this car or to pay for this house or whatever. So I was looking at this, I was kind of taking notes on here, but like, if you think about it, like I'm trying to make this make sense. If you think about it, like you jump into this game, you jump into the economy, right? We have no choice but jumping into the economy unless we're trust fund kids or whatever. Like it takes a certain amount of effort to support ourselves and build some sort of life, right? Let's say it's like 100 points of effort. That effort, it's your choice on whether you want all of that effort to be your own doing or somebody else's doing. You see what I'm saying? When you buy assets, that 100 points of effort starts to go away. In other words, you pass it to somebody else. So for example, in my life, let's say it's 100 points of effort that has to happen in the economy for me to live a good life. My tenants do most of that because I have leverage, and that's what you get with assets. So it's like a wave behind you pushing you on your surfboard. Like it's less and less of your own effort to live a really good life because you have leverage. Versus when you go the other direction, you buy liabilities. It actually takes more effort to maintain that certain life that you set yourself up for. So if you have a brand new house and new cars and all the clothes and all these expectations, all of a sudden you literally have to work harder. There's more effort. There's more stress on you. And I see that all the time. People get older and older and they have all the things. And now they have to literally work harder to maintain the same life they have. And it's more stressful. You see what I'm saying? Like, and it's the difference between assets and liabilities.
I hear what you're saying. Yeah, I think another difference in like hearing Travis talk about your guys' deal and like, do we access the equity? Do we sell it? Do we refinance it? Do we, what do we do? I think we often forget like real estate is pretty illiquid in the sense of you can't typically just press a button and access that equity, right? I think in a lot of ways that's why real estate is so advantageous because it forces you to think, and it's not a perfect market. I mean, yes, there are times that I think if I could press a button and sell certain properties at certain times and access all that liquidity, I would press that button. But because you cannot do that, it forces you to think.